goal as a landscape photographer, and this should be your goal also, is to capture the landscape in front of you in the best way as possible in that particular moment that got your attention. Capturing the moment means to present in a photo the landscape in front of you as your eye sees it. But what if you want to do something more, to get in one photo a chunk of time, more moments in a continuous exposure? Well, that in the world of landscape photography, it's called a long exposure. There's no way of telling how many seconds define a long exposure, but usually it's about more seconds or sometimes more minutes. Now the problem you're having is you can't just open the shutter and close it after, let's say, a minute, because the bright light outside will overexpose your photo and basically you'll end up with a white image. And just using the lens in front of your camera, it's not enough. That is why you'll need an accessory which is called an ND filter. Now, based on my own experience, you need 2 ND filters in your back kit. You need a 10-stop ND filter for brighter situations, and you also need a 6-stop ND filter, which is the one I'm going to use today. This is an ND filter sent to me by the guys of K&F. So I will say a big thank you to them because they sent me this. And today I'm going to do 2 things. I will test this ND filter, and I will also show you how to use it, how I'm thinking composition, how I'm evaluating the scene for exposure settings, and then how I get to the settings with the ND filter on. Now, when we're talking about ND filters, you have the option to have a circular one that you need to screw it and the rectangular one. Now, I prefer to use rectangular ones. I also had my first ND filter was a 10-stop ND filter, circle one. My problem was that I always had to screw it on top of the polarizer. Sometimes it got jammed. Whenever I wanted to recompose the scene, I had to unscrew it, so it wasn't that feasible. That's why I'm using the square format. If you're wondering why you need a 10-stop ND filter and also a 6-stop ND filter, well, it's because there are situations when the light is low, and in those situations you don't want to stand there for 15 minutes to do one exposure. For example, I had a few problems with my 10-stop ND filter in Norway, for example, where I wanted to shoot some long exposures, but the problem was the sunset was coming and the light forced me to go to 15 minutes exposure, which is not really great, especially when the sunset is coming. A 15-minute exposure will mean basically a 25-minute exposure, probably, I don't know, because the light will get dimmer and dimmer. So you don't want to stay that much in front of a camera to get only one image. There are situations when you could, but not always is the good time. So you need a 6-stop ND filter. I had one, I broke it. This is made from glass, so you have to be extra careful with it. Don't slam it, don't touch it, don't bang on it, don't drop it. It will break just like that. So at first, let's see how the situation goes in terms of composition. Let's evaluate the scene over here. Probably you hear the roar of the water that's flowing really rapidly. So let's see. Probably judging by how it looks from over here, I think I will try a landscape format. I don't like that piece of water over there, but this flow kind of looks like a perfect composition to be done in a vertical mode. So I think it's time to bring the big guns, which is the full frame DSLR, and start shooting. Now the first thing that I'm going to do is do the composition as shown in the previous small clip, and then I will assess the exposure without any filter, just the polarizer. Only the polarizer stays. I did the first exposure and I'm making sure that the water is not overexposed. This is the biggest danger in a situation like this. You get the water overexposed because the water is so bright. It's very easy to overexpose it. So my settings are 1/4 of a second, f11, and ISO 100. Now that I have the basic exposure, so it's 1/4 of a second, f11 and ISO 100, let's see what exposure I would get with the ND filter. So I'm using an app which is called Exposure Calculator. It's up to you what app you use. This is what the app that I'm using. So aperture 11, shutter 1/4 of a second, ISO 100. The final aperture I want to be f11, and with an ND of 6 stops I get 16 seconds exposure. Now if I would want to use a 10 stop ND filter, I would get 256 second exposure, which is 4 minutes and 16 seconds. There are situations when you need that, but in this situation where the water is coming down the valley with such a big force, you don't really need 4 minutes exposure. So even though the app said that I'm gonna need 16 seconds at f11 ISO 100, it turns out that I need 30 seconds f11 ISO 100 just to match the original exposure, judging by the way the histogram is positioned. Maybe the sun went down a little bit, I don't know, but this was the exposure time that I needed. So if I would have used the 10 stop, probably would have been a lot longer. So that's why it's very useful to have this 6 stop ND filter. Now let's talk about the quality of this filter. I'm really impressed with the packaging. It arrives in a really beautiful pouch that looks like this. Now the only problem that I'm having is that this glass is so fine, it slides that easily, and I'm using it with the leaf holder, so I don't know how it would behave with the holder from K&F, but with the leaf holder the glass slides down, not very fast. But if I would have talked with you probably, let's say 2 or 3 minutes, and I went there, this filter would have been shattered on the rocks. So I was lucky, I was caught in time. That was the problem. Now the first exposure I did was with the white balance set on cloudy, and then I went on shade. Both of these images produced a photo that originally seems a little bit shifted towards green. When I used the auto white balance option, the image was completely shifted towards, let's say, a little bit or slightly magenta, slightly. This is not a big problem. All ND filters shift the color to one place or another. Now with this filter, I think the images are pretty good. You get the image sharp and you get a slight tint of color, yes, but as I told you, all ND filters shift the color to one place or another. They either make it the image warmer or colder. BW does that, Lee does it, and this filter also does it. Now I will be able to tell you more about this in probably a year of use. I have to get it to the Dolomites. It have to withstand fog and every other moment when, for example, it says that this filter will not, it says that this filter is not going to get steam, so I need a really wet and misty and foggy morning in the Dolomites to test it. But the main problem that I'm having right now, as I told you, is that this filter is not sitting properly in my leaf holder, so I will have to get a K&F holder, I think, that will probably hold this filter better. So let me know if this video was useful to you. If you have questions, use the comment section below, share this video with your friends, subscribe if you're here for the first time, and until next time, keep on photographing. It's the only way to get better. Bye bye.